afternoon. I'm Pastor Allen with our daily Bible study, and today is Tuesday, September 8th, and we are looking at Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verses 1 through 8. Now, I skipped over the 7 woes in Matthew chapter 23. Last week I talked about we would look at those this week, but I did not have time to start reading those and breaking them down, and so we will get to those, but right now we're going to continue on, and then we'll come back to the 7 woes, and we'll probably do each woe separately or 2 of them per day, because there's a lot of useful, important information in there for us. And so today's reading is from Matthew's Gospel, and it's about the destruction of the temple and the signs of the end times. And that's a subject that everybody seems to find fascinating, and some even try to set dates and put a time schedule to it. And Jesus says, no, we're not to do that. But we do need to be aware of the signs, because that's important for us to know. But as far as the day and the time of when it will happen, the only one who knows is God Almighty. So Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. "Do you see all these things?" he asked. "Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming at the end of the age?" Jesus answered, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars, rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of birth pains." And so Jesus was teaching the 7 woes, and they left the temple and they're walking away, and his disciples came up to him and said, look at the temple. And the temple was a fascinating building. You remember when Notre Dame Cathedral burned last year, and how all the news was covering it? I mean, it had worldwide coverage because it was such an old, magnificent building filled with history. Well, in the same way with the temple was this massive, huge, architectural, beautiful structure, and anybody who saw it was amazed by it, and people traveling by would make a trip to see it, and people who had seen it remembered how wonderful and how great the building was. And then Jesus says, "Do you see all these things? Even though it's a great building, even though it's got these massive stones, truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." And Jesus is predicting the destruction of the temple that happened in AD 70. Only the western wall remains, and parts of the western wall, but those stones are massive. The Jewish people in Israel call it the Wailing Wall, and tradition is people go and leave written prayers in the cracks and crevices of the temple. But those stones that are left there are massive, but the rest of it, the roof and the other walls and all of that, was destroyed and torn down. All we can see now left is the western wall. And so as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Remember, I told you we're not to be setting a timetable or setting a schedule, because that is up to God. But we need to be aware that the end of the age is coming, and that there are signs of the end times. Broad signs, not specific signs, but signs that we can see and read and be aware of. And so Jesus answered in verse 4, "Watch out, no one deceives you." In other words, be on your guard, be aware, pay attention, because people are coming and they're going to try to trick you. Watch out that no one deceives you. He says, verse 5, "Many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many." Not a few, many. And so he's telling us, be on our guard. How's the best way that we could be on our guard? Well, remain in communication with Jesus through our prayer. Remain in communication with Jesus through reading the Word. Because it's very plain and it's very clear, especially right here in these verses. You know, you can turn on the TV and you'll see almost people that are claiming to be Messiah-like, who are asking for money to bless them. And if you send them money, you will be blessed. Some of it's false teaching, and some of it borders on false teaching. And then he says in verse 6, "You will hear of wars," which we hear of wars, "rumors of war," we hear rumors of war, "but see to it that you are not alarmed." So even though we hear about wars and rumors of war, we don't need to be alarmed. We don't need to be scared. And then verse 7, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." And we see that all too often. Not too many years in the past, Russia invaded its next door neighbor. Syria has invaded their neighbors. So these things are happening. They've been happening, but I think there's been an increase in the amount of these things happening. And Jesus says such things must happen, but the end is still to come. So we're just at the beginning, I believe, at the end of the age. But again, I don't know, because the final timetable is up to God. And in verse 7, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines," and we know of famines. Some Bibles translate this as plagues. And if COVID-19 doesn't qualify as a plague, I don't know what does. We've got those things happening right now, right here. And then earthquakes. Earthquakes in various places. A couple weeks ago, North Carolina had an earthquake, the first earthquake in over 100 years. They're certainly increasing. I know in our area, Youngstown, many years ago, started having more and frequent earthquakes, which they blamed on fracking. But ultimately, I think that it's a warning sign from God. And then in verse 8, he says, "All these things are the beginning of birth pains." And you know, when a mother goes into labor, she starts with some pains and some, contractions. But it's a long process. Well, relatively short for humans. But what Jesus is telling us, the world is going through something similar to birth pains or birth contraction. And eventually it arrives at an end. For a mother, a baby is born, but for us, it's going to be the destruction of the heavens and the earth, and a new world and a new heavens will be created. So God and Jesus warns us over and over and over. And I hope that you are listening and hearing, because just as the temple was destroyed, so these other things mentioned here and other places in the Bible will happen. Guaranteed. We need to be ready. We need to be following God. We need to have given our lives over to Jesus, because there's only two places for us to go: kingdom of heaven or the place of punishment known as hell. And the choice is up to you. Have a great day. Talk to you later.